Well, good day, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you on the occasion of the 7th International Conference of the University of Human Development. My only regret is that for health reasons I can't be with you physically. I must rely on this new technology to send you all a greeting. Well, you've chosen the broadest possible title for your conference this year, haven't you? New Trends in Language Education, Linguistics, Literature and Translation. And it raises an intriguing question for a keynote speaker. Is there any unifying notion that can relate these four professions and their intellectual foundations? I think there are two that would fall under the heading of new trends. I've already hinted at the first, digital technology, for surely there is nothing newer. I'll give some examples from each domain, most of which I'm sure will be familiar to you. First, in language education, we need only think of some of the modern acronyms. CALL, C-A-L-L, for Computer-Assisted Language Learning. Well, that's perhaps not a new trend now, for it's been part of our vocabulary since the 1980s. But MOOCs, massive open online courses, they've been with us for only a decade. The first recorded use of that term is exactly 10 years ago, 2009. And you will know of many technological intelligent aids in the classroom that were, well, they were just not around a few years ago. Secondly, in linguistics, the most obvious domain that's benefited from new technology is corpus linguistics, enormous collections of online data that allow us to explore actual language use more fully and more rapidly than ever before. When I got my first job in 1962 as a research assistant on Randolph Quirk's Survey of English Usage at University College London, the aim was to compile a corpus of 1 million words of spoken and written English, and we saw it as a huge task. Today, even 1 billion words is considered small by the standards of today's corpora. And there's also the growing field of internet linguistics, which includes the analysis of, well, everything from short text messages to the conversations that form part of artificial intelligence systems. And then thirdly, in literature, well, leaving aside the more esoteric domains, such as programming computers to write poetry and novels, technology has entered literary studies in many ways. I'm thinking of such developments as computer-aided analyses of style, word searches, and authorship studies, which parts of Shakespeare might have been written by collaborators. Then there's the online availability of texts, enabling new investigations of themes and trends and fashions. For instance, would you like to know how many new words came into English in the writing of Charles Dickens, as first recorded in the Oxford English Dictionary? In the old days, it would take you months to trawl through the dictionary to find them. Today, we can answer such a question in seconds. I've just done it, and the answer is 252. And fourthly, in translation, well, we have now another well-known acronym here, CAT, for Computer-Aided or Assisted Translation. And this now exists in innumerable forms, such as spelling and grammar checkers, terminology banks, electronic dictionaries, online concordances, and the intriguing new world of translation memories, databases of text segments translated into other languages. These are not replacing human translators, I don't think. Rather, they're speeding up the translation task. I don't personally believe that one day human translators will be replaced by machines. There'll always be the need to edit the output of a machine, especially to capture the more colloquial styles of language and the stylistic subtlety of literature. The machine, such as the one that powers Google Translate, for instance, it can provide the gist of a text, but not its authorial stylistic identity. So this juxtaposition of human and machine suggests to me a second new trend, one that is human-centred, and one that I would think is dear to the heart of the mission of your university. We can find it in all four domains, a fresh emphasis on the human being. So first, in language education, I see it in the so-called post-method era. Now this refers to the shift that's taken place in language teaching from reliance on a single method, such as the direct method or the oral method, to one where teachers allow local and contextual considerations to influence their approach. There's a new focus on developing general strategies, such as promoting learner autonomy and maximising learner opportunities. You can see the latest thinking in these areas in the special interest groups of organisations such as IATEFL. Secondly, in linguistics, I see the focus on the human being in the trend, now several decades old, to study language use in relation to language structure, in addition to language structure. The fields of sociolinguistics and psycholinguistics clearly illustrate this change of direction, but to my mind it's most evident in the domain of pragmatics. I define pragmatics as the study of the choices we make when we use language in particular situations, the reasons for those choices and the effects that those choices convey. Teachers work in a pragmatic frame of mind all the time, such as when they correct a student's work, replacing the student's bad choices by the teacher's better ones. And many of the questions that English learners ask require a pragmatic answer. Which is correct? I am going or I'm going? Well, the answer, of course, is both. One is more colloquial. But finding all the places where there are choices of this kind is a major research enterprise. Thirdly, in literature, where the central place of the human being is obvious. After all, that's what literature chiefly does, provide insight into the human condition. What's less obvious is how we should view the relationship between literature and language. In many parts of the world, the study of literature and the study of language is carried on in different departments that never talk to each other. But for me, there should always be an introduction, an interaction between the literature and language departments. We should never study language without including the cases where language is being used most richly and effectively in poems and novels and plays. And similarly, we should never study literature without exploring the linguistic techniques a writer uses in order to achieve that richness and effect. The link between the two worlds was once well summarised by novelist Robert Graves. He said, "A poet needs to master the rules of English grammar before he attempts to bend or break them." It isn't just poets, of course, nor is it just grammar, nor just English. Writers in any language need to study the rules of their language, all the rules of pronunciation, orthography, and vocabulary, as well as grammar, before they bend or break them. The originality of authors lies not only in their marvellous creations of plot and character and atmosphere, but in the way they achieve originality in their language use, by departing from everyday linguistic usage. And finally, in translation, I see a fresh focus on the human in a renewed interest on acceptability. Traditionally, the aim of the translator is to achieve content accuracy. But when I attended a meeting of the translators and interpreters in the European Parliament in Luxembourg recently, the main talking point was not the accuracy of a translation, but its stylistic acceptability. Many ministers have an individual speech style that they want a translation to capture, or a set of preferences about the kind of language they want to see used in any written document published under their name. So to what extent should a translator or interpreter respect this? As one person put it at the Luxembourg conference, do we serve the speaker or not? So, to conclude, I've looked briefly, very briefly, at two new trends, one technological, the other humanitarian, in the four domains identified in the title of your conference. I do not see them as being independent of each other. They overlap in all kinds of ways, and practitioners of one of them can learn a lot from being aware of what is going on in any of the others. The notion of a corpus, for example, is shared by all four. And if there's one place where the four domains can be unified, it's surely here, in a setting that defines itself as a university of human development. So, my best wishes, therefore, for the success of your 7th International Conference.